Good afternoon and welcome. This is Crystal Jordan, Editor-in-Chief for Lennox & Parker, and today we're having a cover conversation to celebrate our November cover. For November, we're talking about the intersection of community, culture, and the church, specifically the Black church. And who better than our cover model for November, Dr. Pastor Jamal Bryant. Welcome to Lennox & Parker.
Thank you for having me. I've never been introduced as a cover model. I'm grateful.
Like I said, we wanted to talk about specifically 2024 has been a trying year for all of us, but specifically for our community. And we know this is a big political year. There's so much going on. And the Black church has been a resource for our community for so many years. But there's so many changes. The Black church is no longer that primary resource. You know, you have a lot of young people that don't see church the same way that our generation did. And so I wanted to ask you, we're going to start this conversation off with your upbringing. And what do you think the differences are between the way you viewed church growing up than the way young children today view the Black church?
I think the Black church is still very much influential. There is no entity or organization in the world that still commands the same level of authority as the Black church does. Not the Divine Nine, not professional organizations. The church is still the epicenter and the heartbeat. I think that as Black Americans have become more affluent, they have become more distant. So that now Sunday, church is an option and not a core curriculum class. So now the average person only goes to church twice a month. Where before we were raised as 80 babies that you were there every Sunday, and now people are at church online while drinking mimosas. And so I think that the church is going to have to recalibrate its stance and its position.
Well, we feel that you've been a big part of showing people, specifically even after 2020, when, you know, church, we weren't able to actually physically go to church. It made it a lot more convenient for people to stay home and watch, and for people to be on their phones watching church or watching church via YouTube or social media. So how do you think, or do you think the church has a responsibility to transition and reach people with the new technology and the new times?
Church culture changes every 4 years. Church culture changes every 20. So the average church is 15 years behind culture.
Wow.
And so those who are watching this, their church boast that they stream live on Facebook. When 97% of Black churches don't have a TikTok account.
Oh, wow.
And so our children are on TikTok. Our parents are on Facebook, and it shows where the disconnect is. Benjamin Mays, former President Morehouse, said you got to run faster or you're forever left behind.
Well, let's talk about how you have been able to run faster. I read that you preached your first sermon when you were still a child, and I heard the title of that sermon was "No Pain, No Gain."
Yes.
Do you remember where your inspiration came from that sermon and what you were talking about?
Well, child is relative. I was a freshman at Morehouse when I preached my first sermon. And so,
frontal lobe wasn't connected, but you were
I was
young
still
adult.
there. So the pain in my life in that point was not liking my college roommate. My pain in my life was having to walk down to the laundromat in West End. So all of that's relative. I think pain is based off of positioning, where it is that you see yourself. So if you would have asked me that question about dealing with pain a year ago, my answer would have been different. I just lost my mother 2 weeks ago, and so that's a different kind of pain that I've not experienced in my life. And so everything that I've gone through heretofore pales in comparison to dealing with that.
Our condolences on
Thank
that.
you.
You know, your voice and your presence, I think, extends beyond the church and has for quite a while. I remember seeing you for the first time on a show, a reality show, and you were coming in as a counselor. To Omarosa. Because she was on a dating show, and I remember watching it. And
Let me pause you right there, because we're going to talk about it later. So that show was executive produced by Donald Trump. because it was a
I did not know.
spinoff from The Apprentice.
It was a spinoff from The Apprentice. Wow.
So that was my first time meeting them, and
Wow.
we stayed at Trump Plaza in Las Vegas.
Wow. That's a
Yes.
nugget I did not expect to be in there, but
I wanted to turn myself in before somebody else, because I've been praying that picture don't ever resurface. So for all the Googlers out there,
you're just putting it out there.
I'm laying myself on the altar. Yes.
I had a conversation with Afeni Shakur, and she told me,
Yes.
if you tell your story,
Yes.
you tell your flaws, then no one
Yes.
else has the power to hold them over you.
There
So
we are.
so you just took it, laid it out there,
Yeah.
and that's where it is. But
Yeah.
that was the first time I saw you.
Yes.
I grew up in Oklahoma, so I know that a lot of people in the Baltimore area were familiar with
Yeah.
you at that time. But you have always walked this line with being very involved in entertainment and people knowing you in that space
Right.
and the church. Did you think it was important to reach people that weren't necessarily in the church? Because a pastor coming on and giving counsel
Yeah.
to a young woman looking for love
Yes.
is not necessarily traditional.
So 92% of what Jesus did was outside of the church. The contemporary institution, 95% of what we do is in the building. And so doing outreach at that level is really the Jesus model, not trapped behind a brick and mortar, but really going to the street corners and the community, and that's what I've endeavored to do in my ministry.
In addition to being a part of entertainment, you also were one of the first organizations, or New Birth, under your leadership, when 2020 took the world by storm and we were trying to figure out what was going on with this COVID virus. The church actually had screenings and was a part of that push in the community with educating our community about how they could get the vaccine and just, get COVID screenings. And you guys were very hands-on. Was there any hesitation to get involved in what often can be seen as like a mixture sometime of like policy and politics and church and state confusion? Where do you stand with that, and why did you jump so quickly to be involved?
Yeah, I didn't feel like it was a political issue, it was a humanitarian crisis. Just recently there was Hurricane Milton came through Florida and Georgia, South Carolina, and ravished hundreds of thousands of homes. And the governor of Florida, DeSantis, has not taken the president's call or the vice president's call, saying it was politics. It didn't matter that people were underwater, displaced, and were homeless. Mike Johnson, who's a Speaker of the House and Congress, will not do an emergency reconvening until after the election. I think when we put politics over people, that we've misplaced our priorities.
And that's, this year we talked about is a big, people are more separated and there's a bigger divide than ever before. I think racially, politically, financially, socially, we're just at a divide. What do you think is the culprit behind so much of that? Because there's the polarization of this country. In my lifetime, I've never seen it like this.
Yeah.
Where do you think that's coming from?
Well, it is just now pronounced. It has always been present. Under former President Trump, hate crimes went up by 75%.
Wow.
Let's not forget that in post-Obama, when we were supposed to be in a post-racial society, is when we had to deal with George Floyd.
Right.
And so it has been in front of us. The Klan no longer wears white robes. They now wear Brooks Brothers suits. And so it has been repackaged in a different way. When you've seen the dismantling of DEI in our lifetime, to suggest that racism doesn't exist is false. Just in the last 18 months, they're banning books in Florida that talk about Rosa Parks and talk about the Montgomery bus boycott. And so the sheets have been pulled off. And the naked body of the original sin of America, which is racism, is on full display for everyone to see.
So let's talk about the church's responsibility in that, because a lot of times there's this feeling of, if you are Christian, if you are a part of a church, that is your first priority, right? And then the church sees no color. There's this unrealistic idea that if you're a Christian, you're not supposed to see color, but we also understand that that's happening. So how can the church be involved in conversations about race without showing, being fair and being equal, but yet being honest?
Race is not fair. Yeah, you can't be fair to racism. It is almost akin to, let me hear the rapist side of the story.
Wow.
And then a rapist justifying saying she shouldn't have had on a red dress. Is driving while black. And so racism is uncomfortable. And so the fact that they're trying to erase history as if it didn't happen, who is that fair to? It's not fair to the children, it's not fair to history. Maya Angelou said that when the hunters write history, then the lions are always the victim. So the hunters are having their day, and minorities are finding themselves in the crosshair of what America really looks like.
So what is the outcry? What can the church do? How can we be proactive about speaking up and having a call to action and still embracing across cultures and races but still be honest and say, hey, this is how we can be active, this is how we can show our support, but this is also how we can fight something that's unfair.
Well, I think your question belies what is the concern of a generation that doesn't come, that the church isn't speaking to the issues. Where is the black church's position over women having authority over their own bodies? Jesus said, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If you let me in, I'll come in. What is that, Pastor Bryant? That's pro-choice.
Wow.
Says, I'm not coming in and telling you what to do. You have to make a decision. The government, which is a democracy, is now trying to operate as a theocracy that says, if you do not fall in line with what Sunday school tells me, then it's illegal, and that is not really the clarion call of the Bible.
That is deep. I have not heard that put in that way.
Yeah.
I think that is a perspective that people need to hear, because it does become a religious or moral question, right? And I think there are people that are saying, politics, if I am a Christian and I'm a believer, then I have to vote according to my religious belief.
Because white evangelicals don't want a president, they want a pastor. And the role of the president is not to be the pastor. Where's the prophetic voice? Nathan never wanted to be king. His responsibility was to call the king into accountability. And I think that we've lost the prophetic mantle because we've diluted the prophetic office to promising people cars and promising people debt free. But the prophetic mantle is to speak truth to power.
Come on now.
Yeah.
Come on now, Pastor Bryant.
Yeah.
He's preaching the interview. That was one of my next questions is, has religion become, because when we do open up and we do become, have conversations about politics and community and entertainment, and we're part of these things, does the belief system or do our, just the lifestyle, does it become watered down? Because you hear a lot of people, the Bible says you can't be hot and cold. And you hear a lot of pastors that are, catering to what the world wants. And then we're wondering, like, does God's message get watered down in that process?
No, our mandate is we're in the world, but not of it. And a lot of churches are guilty in the third degree of assimilation. The gospel in and unto itself is offensive. If everybody likes what we're preaching, then we're masseuse when we're called to be chiropractors. It is not to make us feel better, it is to straighten us out. And so I think that the real audacity of the gospel is to be offensive and to be countercultural in and unto itself.
And do you think that can work well? Because I said you seem to have found this sweet spot of being able to advise and counsel, but yet not alienate. And I think that's something that we have not seen in times past when it comes to the church. You hear a lot of people talk about church hurt and the fact that they did not feel welcome if they were operating under a different lifestyle, even if, and so.
It is that embracement of culture that only Christians use the term church hurt. I've never heard a Muslim say, I got mosque hurt.
That's true.
Never heard a Jew say, I got synagogue hurt. You understand?
Right.
But we have so assimilated to the culture, there would never be a show called The Real Rabbis of New York. Yeah, I mean, because we want to embrace the culture without ever challenging it. So I think our responsibility is finding our passport as immigrants and not to become citizens.
Wow.
Is that I'm trafficking through it, but my ways are not like your ways.
Wow. So many gems being dropped. I'm just trying to digest it all. What made you decide to take to accept the offer to come to New Birth?
Yeah, I knew my season in Baltimore was over. I knew my assignment was finished, and I didn't know what was next. It was Diana Ross and Mahogany. Do you know where you're going to? Do you like the things? And I had no model of how do you leave something you started.
Right.
In church, we have life sentences, death row records. If you started that church, you there until you die. And I didn't know what to do. And so I needed New Birth, and New Birth needed me. So it was a marriage arranged in heaven. Yeah.
And how has this city, because Baltimore, you have a thriving, that DC area, the consistencies are a thriving African American culture.
It's not.
It's not.
You confusing DC for Baltimore. Yeah,
the area, don't put the areas together, keep them separate. Okay.
They are an hour apart, but a world away.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so you have to understand, in DC, they ask you what college you went to. In Baltimore, they ask you what high school you went to.
Touche.
That's two totally different things.
Yeah, right.
I'm just meeting you today. It's been a wonderful afternoon. I am going out on a limb. You're from Toledo, then Tulsa, now Atlanta. I'm willing to put every dime that I have in my pocket to say, you know, no one who has ever moved to Baltimore.
Not moved to.
Yes. I didn't say you know somebody from. Right. I said move to. Unless they play for the Ravens, nobody you know has moved to Baltimore for a job.
That's true. No.
Yeah. When I started Empowerment Temple in 2000, the population was 1.3 million. When I left in 2018, the population was 750.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's a lot of runaway slaves in Atlanta, in Charlotte, in Houston, who looking for freedom on the other side of Emancipation Proclamation. Yeah, so Baltimore is the only metropolitan city where they're selling houses for $1.
Wow.
Because they want to try to do urban renewal and urban development. And so it's a different space. I can't compare Baltimore to Atlanta. And I love Baltimore. Let me say that before they burn my Ravens jersey in the street. I love Baltimore. That's my home.
Yeah.
That's my people. The wire all day long.
Yeah.
It's my roots. Yes.
But what was that like? Because from an outside perspective, it was announced that Jamal Bryant is coming to New Birth.
Yes.
And there was a lot going on. A lot of people were questioning what is going to happen here. Yeah. You came and immediately just seemed to really sync with the city. You were involved with the film and entertainment industry. You were. I mean, it was a new birth for the church, and I'm certain for you as well. But I would love to hear your perspective on that transition.
No, it was great. The day that they announced it, it was wonderful. My first Sunday, it was heaven. Then my first business meeting, when they told me we were $32 million in debt and 4 months from foreclosure. I was Chicken Little, the sky was falling. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what was happening, but it was the challenge that I needed to really stand on 10 toes. To really trust God. And God has not failed me in the 5 years that I've been here.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a break. And now that we've talked a little bit about church, we're going to come back and talk about one of the other areas that Pastor Jamal Bryant is involved in, which is, entertainment and the culture. He's a huge voice in the culture. And I want to ask his advice and his counsel on some of the things that we're all seeing happening on social media and entertainment and different, just pop culture, what's happening there from his perspective. Stay right there. This is a conversation about church, community, and culture with Lennox and Parker. Stay right there. We'll be right back. And we're back here at Lennox and Parker having a conversation that is going to celebrate our November cover. And again, our cover model is the Reverend Dr. Jamal Bryant, doing a great job for us.
Thank you.
Great conversation. I mentioned to you before we started talking that I was at an event yesterday, and I think about Black excellence, and this business owner had created 2 polo teams with underserved youth, and he stood up and he said, I am in the business of practicing excellence, not perfection. And that was profound to me, because so often, specifically in our community, we see people become disenchanted and discouraged when leaders that they held to perfection fall, right? And we're seeing that right now. We've seen that for years. You know, I think I was watching a special that showed O.J. Simpson, and then we see people like Bill Cosby that have done so many amazing things for our community, and then their humanity that we're not excusing, that happens, and then people are discouraged and want to throw, as they would say, the baby out with the bathwater. This is happening right now. We see a case just playing out on social media, and on every time you look at a news report, we see Sean Combs or P. Diddy being accused of some things. And again, he's someone that represented Black excellence, Black entrepreneurship at its finest. And so from your perspective, Dr. Bryant, I wonder, how do you encourage people to celebrate the message and the example, and not to become so connected to the person that they lose that inspiration that they were able to pull?
There are 2 most known scriptures in the Bible. The first is John 3:16. The second is the 23rd Psalm. Atheists, Catholics, Muslims, 5%ers, Hebrew Israelites, they all know the Lord is my shepherd.
Yes.
To deal with that line, the church has to rip out the entire book of Psalms. Nobody should read the book of Psalms in cancel culture when you're dealing with a murderer, you're dealing with an adulterer, you're dealing with a manipulator. But everybody's grandmother went to 23rd Psalm because we know how to separate it. The problem is, particularly for Black people, we celebrate people greater in death than we do in life. Michael Jackson, Prince, Aretha Franklin, so Elvis Presley sold more albums in death than they did while they were alive. I think that one of the most difficult things to do is to separate the gift from the stocking. You can remember, I didn't know you, you remember what your parents gave you when you turned 10. You have no idea where that stocking is, right?
True.
Yeah.
That's true.
And they put arts and crafts and went to Holly Lobby and put glitter to put your name on there. The stocking is away, but the gift is still there. And I think that's why people have to remain humble, that your gift is always greater than you. John Maxwell wrote a book that was really redefining for my own life after coming through a very public divorce because of adultery on my part, is he wrote this book that I want to recommend to gifted people called Talent is Not Enough. Is that people hide behind their talent without developing their character. And you'll spend years developing your talent, but never developing your character.
Right.
And people will turn a blind eye because of people's talent and never focus in on that character. And I think that character development is so important, but you can't dismiss or diminish the gift. I'm a fan of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I went to Morehouse College. I didn't know nothing about the curriculum. I'd never seen the school before. I only went to Morehouse because Dr. King went there. You could have bought me for a nickel when I found out that Dr. King smoked cigarettes. Not Dr. King. Dr. King wasn't smoking Newport 100s. No way in the world. But smoking cigarettes, does that diminish his dream or his contribution? Absolutely not. We live in a mental health crisis and we try to shellac people's humanity. Nobody deals with Dr. King tried to commit suicide twice by 18.
Wow.
Yeah. So mentally fragile, but spiritually robust. And we still salute and have a holiday behind them. And so I think that we've got to be able to separate the gift from the stocking.
Oh, that was good. That was good. This feels like Sunday morning.
Listen.
Or maybe Wednesday. I mean, it feels good. What about you for yourself, though?
Yeah.
You mentioned that you went through a very public divorce. And a lot of people were invested in that and in that story, even more so after, because your ex-wife, Giselle Bryant, is one of the stars of Real Housewives of Potomac. So people became even more interested in that. How do you navigate that space now? You announced your new engagement. Congratulations on that. We're happy to see that. But finding love after going through a public divorce and then people being involved in your personal life publicly, and now making this announcement to go back into a new marriage. How do you navigate what to share and what to keep private?
Yeah, I think regrettably social media doesn't have a timestamp, and people think I got divorced on the last season of Potomac. I wasn't married when the show started. Right. So I've been divorced 11 years. So people are asking, oh, how does your ex feel? I don't know. I think that you have to give yourself permission to, one, forgive yourself, and two, not be beholden or enslaved by bots on Instagram who really don't have an invested future stake in your own life. And once you are delivered from people, that's harder to be delivered from than fentanyl. But when you get free from other people's opinion,
that's true.
Woo!
That's true.
I'm telling you, it's like a slave leaving Savannah who made it to Boston. It's like, boss, we done made it. No. So I had to be free from what other people think and what other people believe. People want you to be single while they got somebody.
With a pastor.
Yes.
Yeah. What made you want to get married again?
I found the right person. So I wasn't one of those who's just in love with being in love.
Well, obviously, because you were single quite a long time.
Yes. So I think it's all in finding the right person and finding the right time. Right. And being in the right place. And I think that men get to another place in their life's journey than women do. Little girls dream about being a bride. I don't know one man who at 12 saw themselves as a groom, saying, a man got to be reminded the week of the prom to go get a tuxedo. You know what I mean? But I think that you have to navigate that space in your own journey and seeing where it is that you are and what it is that you want to accomplish in your life. And then you have to see that Forbes magazine is right that most successful men have successful homes. So nobody wants to deal with the imbalance of R. Kelly's marriage. Right. Nobody wants to deal with Diddy at 54 never being married. Right. But your home life impacts your public life.
Let's talk about the fact that specifically, I remember, being in college, and unfortunately, I mentioned to you and your staff earlier, I was not fortunate enough to go to a HBCU, right? So I went to a PWI. Yeah. And at the University of Oklahoma, there were Black students that were football players, and then a few of us that made it for our grades. But what I learned in that experience was that the white students, as we neared graduation, those of us that were seniors together and had classes together, they were preparing for marriage. Yes. Right? Their fathers were taking them to buy engagement rings. They were looking towards buying their first house as the gift deposit. While my Black friends, the males, their mothers were saying, well, now you got a degree, you got an engineering degree, you don't have to marry no girl, you are a catch, play the field, Yeah. And so I think the difference in our culture when it comes to marriage and family could be a big part of that. You mentioned Diddy being 54 and being to what some guys consider the ultimate, I've got a beautiful woman here, beautiful woman there. How do we change that to where we do understand, where young men do understand the value of a good woman?
George Drury wrote a book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome that says we inherit some of the impacts of slavery and don't even know it. In no other culture in the world, if I take you today to Germany, to take you to Japan, take you to Tibet, take you to Norway, you can find no other culture where women will say, I don't need a man. Yeah, it is the curse of having to be strong.
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
but it is also a imbalanced playing field. So they went to go look for engagement rings, but the Black Student Union was having seminars on how to pay off Sally Mae. You weren't looking for no ring.
Trying to figure
You
out.
was waiting till the last minute. Can my mama afford this robe? And can my aunt and them get here?
How can I get forbearance on this
Yes.
loan?
Yeah, so we have to move from a survival mode to a thriving mode. We forget that in the dawn of Section 8, that you couldn't be in Section 8 if there was a man in the house. So men who loved their family and their children had to leave at the sacrifice of their children eating. So it is a psychological trauma that our people have to overcome and have to bypass. There was a spike in marriages 2 times in our lifetime. The first one was the Cosby Show. Is that we were seeing a Black middle-class family every Thursday at 8 o'clock. Says, wow, here's a husband and wife, and it wasn't Florida and James Evans, in the projects. And then the second spike of marriage we saw was Michelle and Barack Obama. That every night we saw a husband and a wife on the news and say, wow, this is obtainable. But we've got to also see where it is pushed through. I'm in the South. You're from the South. I would never ask you how old you are.
Please don't.
I'm not. But what I am going to say is this is the very first time in the history of hip hop where rap artists are public about a relationship.
Very much so.
Yeah, so you go from Jay-Z to A$AP Rocky. When I was coming up, they had a girlfriend in private. We was reading Source magazine trying to find out.
They had to send away.
Yeah. Whether they
Get
were
pregnant, you'd have to go away.
There we are. Come on, New Edition. But all of that you had to play out. So we have to make Black love vogue again.
Yeah, I like that. Make Black love vogue again. What is the biggest difference between Jamal Bryant as a groom coming up here and Jamal Bryant as a groom the first time around?
Yeah. So when I got married, I was 29. When I am getting remarried, I am 52.
Okay.
And so I am different as a man and how it is that I see the world, how I think about legacy, who I will spend the rest of my life with. I got to make different kind of decisions at 52.
I would hope so.
I got to ask, who going to take me to my doctor's appointment? I wasn't thinking about that at 29. I got to ask critical questions. Who's going to oversee to make sure my children are okay? Who's going to be with me? And who gonna put me in the nursing home? You laughing, but those you got to ask some critical questions.
I'm right there with you.
At 29, it's about having a good time.
Yeah.
At 52, it's about having a good life. And I found somebody who I can spend a good life with.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, again, we congratulate you, and we're happy to see that because I think representation matters.
Yes.
And as a leader, it's exciting, especially a leader that we've seen be very honest about his past issues in marriage, and to be able to say, I'm going back and I'm in love again is a powerful thing. We talked a little bit earlier, you put it out on the table about your relationship, or not relationship, but the fact that you had met Donald Trump before.
Yes.
I would be remiss not to ask you some questions about this upcoming election, because this is one that, again, the nation is so polarized. It's almost amazing how you can see the divide and where you drive, the signs, and people are angry. What are your thoughts just on how the church needs to approach this election? Because if either side wins, there's going to be a lot of angry, unhappy, discouraged, and probably fearful people on the other side. Whatever way the pendulum shifts.
But only one will seek to heal. The other will amplify the division. Just last week, the Republican candidate said, do you want the white president or the black one?
Jesus.
Yeah. And so I think the role of the president is to bring the nation together, to not amplify where is the division.
What about just like you mentioned, you mentioned Dr. King, and it's ironic that you mentioned mental health, because that's one of the things that as of late as a community we've been more in touch with, our mental health and making sure that we're okay. Like I said, either way, there are a lot of people that are very fearful and have a lot of anxiety about the future. What words would you share with our viewers as they look to 2025 being between the economy, the housing market, and even just the things that you're constantly seeing on social media? All this, years ago, if a celebrity had something salacious happen, you weren't getting hit with it every 10 minutes, causing a lot of people a lot of anxiety, and just mental health is at issues, depression is at an all-time high. From your perspective as a pastor, what advice would you give to people really struggling with that right now?
The Heritage Foundation put America on its heels by publishing Project 2025 and said this is what they want to see Donald Trump roll out the first 100 days of office, is the killing off of Social Security, of Medicaid, the defunding of HBCUs, the raising up of the death penalty. The key that people are missing is they have a plan. In Japan, every family has a 100-year plan. I think my sixth grade teacher gave us an axiom that I hold on to. It says, if you fail to plan, then your plan will fail. And I think that those who are anxious, do you have a plan? Do you have a strategy? Do you have a blueprint? What is it that you want to do if Trump wins? What is it that you endeavor to do if Kamala wins? And so I think that every person should not wait till January 1st to figure out what is your plan, but to start sitting down now and mapping out that strategy and that agenda.
My last question for you, as a pastor that is a leader for our community, I think a lot of people always ask about Black leaders, but I think your actions have proven you to be one, and that's why we're saluting you with this. What do you want to see for your community? Like, what are some of the things that Dr. Jamal Bryant, if he could sit down and kind of map out his plan for his community, what would those priorities be? I
would like to see my community have access to capital so that we can really thrive in entrepreneurship. I'd like to see our children being exposed to STEM so that they can compete on a global stage. I would like to see the heartbeat of the tenor of who we are spiritually to be multiplied so that revival can break out. I would love to see our love for each other to really go to a different level. In the history of being alive, I've never heard anybody leave a restaurant and say, that's why I don't support white businesses. They're going to go right back. And so I hope that we'll find that love and that camaraderie. Dr. King had a vision called the beloved community, and now we got the hood. And so I think that we have a responsibility to turn the hood into community.
Into the community. Again, thank you so much
for
opening your doors. Your staff has been amazing. We look forward to honoring you on October 20th with this cover reveal. But again, thank you so much for the example that you continue to set for our community.
Thank you. Honored to be a part. I'm grateful.
All right, well, we hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I was sitting here trying not to give it away on my face, but that's what really Lennox and Parker is all about. This is Black excellence, and as Miguel Wilson said, Black excellence is not perfection. It is us living every day and learning to uplift and celebrate each other. And so we hope that you will join us in celebrating Reverend Dr. Jamal Bryant. This has been Crystal Jordan, Editor-in-Chief for Lennox and Parker, and we look forward to seeing you next time.